Well, let's get started promptly. It's 11:01, and again, for those people who have the attendees who just joined, thank you again. My name is Oded Orgil. I'm president of the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce, and I'm thrilled to invite all of you who are attending via webinar and at this event today. For those of you who don't know, the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce is a national organization in Canada, and our mandate is to promote bilateral trade between Canada and Israel. We see ourselves as a facilitator for Canadian and Israeli companies to learn to work together, to create opportunities for themselves, their employees, and really to accelerate the trade and the interaction between Canada and Israel in these two great countries. So thank you again, as I said, for joining us. Here, if I may, I'm going to make a very brief introduction to our guests and then talk a little bit about what we're doing. So our three guests today are three of Canada's great disruptors in the capital markets area. They're gonna join. We're gonna have a nice interaction and talk a little bit about the benefits of the different kinds of technology integration, such as paperless, electronic processing, and what the implications are for the Canadian market and how it can help perhaps Israeli companies and other international companies. So our three guests today are first, if I may, Erik Sloane, who is Chief Revenue Officer at the NEO Stock Exchange, Jenna, who is CEO at Odyssey Trust Company, and Matt Goldstein, who is the Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder at DealMaker. So welcome all of you. Thank you guys for joining us today. And if I may, I'd like to start, if I can, with Jenna, because it's early in the morning. She probably had a good couple cups of coffee and she's raring to go. So Jenna, maybe give us a little bit of a quick overview on what is a transfer agent and what does it do for public companies and why is it important for their shareholders?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
You sound good.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you so much for having us speak to you this morning. We're so thrilled to be doing an event with the Canadian Israel Chamber of Commerce. And the three of us together, because we work a lot, getting to talk about our businesses and explain about the unique role that we're playing in disrupting capital markets. So first of all, a question that lots of people ask me, what is a transfer agent? Or what exactly does a transfer agent do is one I get a lot. So transfer agent, essentially, if you think about the change from being a private company to a public company, is where a big distinction happens. So if you're a private company, you can be maintaining your cap table on an Excel spreadsheet. You could be using ShareWorks or Carta. But when you become public, there's an increased level of confidence that needs to come with management of your cap table. And that's where the need for a regulated transfer agent comes into play. And so in Canada, to list on the TSXV or the TSX and NEO, I believe you need to be a trust company to be a transfer agent. And so in that capacity, we are actually a financial institution. And what the role that we play with you as a public company is that any securities that get issued come from us, any cancellations come to us. We are the gatekeeper of your shareholder records. That's our primary function. In addition to that, we have a couple of key roles with public companies during the year. So we manage and run your annual general meeting, which you're required to have by law. We also perform any escrow releases, any dividend payments, really administration relating to your shareholders comes from us. We also have an employee plans service line, so we can manage your employee plans. We have a great tech stack, and we work with a trusted partner, Global Shares, in that capacity as well. And then we really are the key point person for your shareholders. So where that communication used to go to the CEO or to the CFO in your private company, it's now funneled to us, and we manage those requests. So maybe someone needs to re-register a share certificate or deposit it with their broker or put it through a loss and estate. All of that comes to your transfer agent. And so that's sort of an overview of what we do, but why Odyssey started is because the industry in Canada is very, very consolidated. So ahead of us getting into the space, there was really only TSX, Computershare, and AST. AST is now gone. They were bought by TSX. So now there's really two competitors. And so it's a very, very consolidated, non-competitive marketplace. Odyssey, our why was that we believed that we could deliver exceptional service to companies listed in Canada, and also to international companies that are coming to list in the Canadian market, which we know is much, much more popular than it's ever been before. And what was really needed there was disruption from a tech standpoint. And so that's what we're focused on. We do things paperlessly. We're committed to virtual aspects to our business, and people want things instant now. It's not the old game that it used to be. So we're constantly trying to disrupt the way that we do things to make this business more efficient.
Jenna, that's amazing. So I think what you're really saying is, like, we in Canada tend to love oligopolies, and you're trying to break some of that. So congratulations on that. I think that's fantastic. Erik, you're in another sector that has been dominated perhaps by a couple different exchanges. I mean, we do have now, you're the 4th exchange in Canada. There are 2 senior ones and 2 more venture exchange. Maybe talk a little bit, if you can, from a high level, and what makes you guys different.
Yeah, certainly. And you know, the word of the day and probably of the last 12 months, never mind our 6.5 years as a senior stock exchange here in Canada, has been disruption, drive change, and no different than the work Jenna and Matt are delivering upon as well. But you nailed it, 2 senior markets. And for us, you know, what really sets our organization apart amongst our peers, driven first by ownership. You know, NEO as a stock exchange, we're a private company ourselves, but we're owned by majority buy-side asset managers and really long-term thinkers about the Canadian capital markets, and not small ones either. Some of the largest pension plans and asset managers in the country came together to really form NEO and make sure that we had that long-term vision and purpose in mind when really reconstructing the exchange world to fit our purpose and where we want to see Canadian capital markets evolve. You know, a bit like what Jenna described as well, you have to build for the whole ecosystem. So we have some large sell-side dealers that are a part of our organization. In fact, RBC was the cornerstone behind that, paired with Barclays, Virtu, and BCE. So, you know, origination of the business really focused on changing the way exchanges think for the long term, drive change, be partners with your companies that would seek to list on the exchange, and really move it away from being transaction oriented. You know, we're here for now, but we're gone as soon as you're public or paying attention to something else. We moved on to the next deal. NEO, for us, success isn't 2,000 or 4,000 public companies trading in our exchange. It's about having a couple hundred high quality, disruptive companies themselves that are seeking, you know, a different kind of exchange partner in Canada. And, you know, I'll maybe twist it one other way, because it's a bit of a passion of ours and something that I think your audience will probably appreciate. You'll see some more news on it shortly. We don't just take the existing plumbing and make it move faster, better, more efficient for clients. It's also about changing that plumbing to do something really interesting and disruptive. So where we've been spending a lot of time with both Jenna and Matt in recent months is just really building better rails from the private company world into going public, and tackling some of the, I'd say, extreme old-fashioned inefficiencies attached to some of the ways we used to do things that worked really well. But while we're all afraid of touching pens and paper, we can do them electronically and kind of make use of some of the technology in a different way to help private companies as well. So those are kind of a couple of the ways that we're focused on it, and Cornerstone being one of the first and foremost things we thought about.
That's great. Thank you, Erik. And first of all, I apologize. There's been some comments. My audio is not that great. The good news is no one wants to really hear me, so I will try to be short, but thank you. And I don't know if I can fix it for this time. Matt, maybe tell us a little bit about DealMaker. You guys are new. You know, what is it again that you do, and what differentiates you from others?
Sure, Oded, thank you. And like Erik and Jenna said, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a privilege to address my fellow panelists and this audience, many of whom are our customers. So I've seen already some notes flying around in the chat. If you do have notes, please do throw them in and we'll address them. Oded, DealMaker is a technology company. Our customers use our software during capital raise transactions. They use it to manage and track all of the subscribers on a private placement. Orders are routed through our automated workflow. We process payments. We manage the eligibility requirements if somebody is an accredited investor or family and friends under the various different rules that are applicable to securities transactions in Canada and in the US. And we're used across the capital markets. So lawyers who are looking for a better, faster solution to manage all sorts of subscription agreements on a file, investment bankers, broker dealers who are raising from their own networks, issuers themselves who are engaging with prospects online and managing the completion of orders through our software. We work with trust companies and transfer agents, as Jenna knows. We work with stock exchanges. And our why really kind of centers around a little twist on one of the words that we've thrown around so far, which is disruption. Our why is really facilitation. I mean, we live in a world where people expect real-time transparency and collaboration. They're standing on the subway platform. They want to know when the next train is coming. And in the capital markets, especially when I was practicing, my co-founder and myself were practicing law, Rebecca Casaba, who started the company together, we just saw way too much manual hidden workflow where an issuer was raising capital and they'd send around a bunch of subscription agreements, they'd come back filled in wrong, the lawyer would track or a paralegal would track what's the status of the book. You could never see in real time how many orders have been completed, how much has been raised, who's getting stuck in the flow. And so by bringing all of the capital raise workflow online, we've been able to deliver speed and efficiency to all sorts of players across the ecosystem. So our why is really to bring speed and innovation to make the capital markets better for everyone. And using technology, we're able to deliver what people expect in 2021.
Great, thank you, Matt. Erik, I'd like to ask you, I mean, obviously the stock market is where all the action is. You guys are right in the middle of it. I mean, and today I believe, I mean, again, the trading that you guys account for 10 to 15% of what's going on in the market. And so therefore you guys are dealing with, again, you're dealing with the transfer agents, you're dealing with the administrators like Matt and his group, you're dealing with the bankers and lawyers and companies. What are some of the trends that you're seeing going forward? I mean, from where are the hotspots? Where are people putting their money? Where are companies going public?
It's been fun kind of watching that evolve over the last 12 months, to be honest. Immediacy has been a very critical function of all of this. The amount of information is just very quickly leaving our world and getting into the hands of anyone across the country, across the globe, about public companies and new news that's coming out. So it's a lot of fun kind of being in the middle at an exchange. You kind of a hub to a bunch of different spokes and partners that are bringing deal flow, trading deal flow, consuming data, making investment decisions. As far as trends, Jenna hit on an interesting one. We've got a long list and growing list of public companies now that are listed with NEO. A number of them are coming to us from abroad. The US coming to Canada, definitively a trend. We've got a few coming out of Europe as well. So seeing Canada as a home and a destination is certainly something that we've caught on to, and a number of companies have indeed identified and placed to come and list with NEO. I would also suggest to you, something else that we've seen quite a bit recently, and we're busy this morning with another market open, companies that are also looking at where else do they go from Canadian capital markets to continue their capital raising journey. You look at kind of developed markets, it's really Canada, London, and the US, New York is kind of your three major hubs for the Western world. And Canada's got a phenomenal stepping stone. We've seen a lot of companies working at upgrading their corporate listings here in Canada, or uplisting or graduating, so that they can position themselves for an international listing, whether it's with the LSE in London or NASDAQ and NYSE in the US. And it's really about demonstrating good governance, good trends, transparency, all things that as an exchange, obviously we work to promote with our issuers, making that whole process more efficient. Looking at sectors, I have seen a very aggressive technology market over the last 6 months. That's a bit the theme of topic so far today. A lot of biopharma companies exploring it. We've seen quite a few very interesting companies coming out to market, alongside some of the other more traditional topics you'll see out of Canadian businesses. But there's one really cool overlay that we're starting to really get our hands on now, and that's ESG. It's really nice to kind of see that capture a broader base, become more front and center. We thought maybe it was going to get a little quiet at the end of last year, but it seems like the street is very focused on both the governance piece, social element, and environmental impact, with a number of the public companies and funds that are now coming out to market across our various platforms.
That's really exciting. I mean, to hear, I mean, those like the ESG, the tech, and the biopharma. Matt, I'd like what are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing a similar sort of thing? And again, being part of the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce, I don't know if the three of you may or may not be aware, there are many Israeli companies who obviously Israel is known as a technology hub, but on the ESG side, biopharma, there's some interesting things. Just wondering what your thoughts, if you're seeing similar to what Erik is seeing.
Well, for us, I think one of the most interesting trends that really bear conversation is a shift towards not in terms of the supply, because there's always been a cross section: oil and gas, biotech, cannabis has been big, but while that ebbs and flows, what I think could be a generational permanent shift is where the money is coming from. So the demand, the buy side. And over the last 20 years, and I'd be interested from Lior's perspective, what's happening in Israel, certainly in North America, until about 2020, the retail side of the market was pretty flat. And if you include mutual funds at the end of the day, and when I say retail, I mean non-professional investors. If you include mutual funds at the end of the day, something like 63% of the equities in the US market, which is $36 trillion, are held by non-professional investors. And so as the market wakes up to where the money is, we see a huge shift in the identity of the capital source. So even if it's an Israeli company, it doesn't matter if it's biotech or cannabis or pharma or gold or oil and gas. The fact of the matter is they've woken up to the realization that non-professional investors control an enormous amount of capital formation. And so we see issuers advertising on Reddit. We see them on Clubhouse. We see an enormous growth in trading apps like Robinhood. In Canada, we have Wealthsimple, right? And so as the market wakes up to the fact that individual investors can use the internet to do research about companies that are bringing offerings to the market, it changes the game in terms of what companies are offering to individual investors, the story they're telling to individual investors, where they go look for capital, right? Whether that's Toronto or AIM or New York. And especially in a COVID era, I'd be interested to hear thoughts from the others, how the COVID era has impacted their businesses and their perspective on the capital markets. But we see is, people are raising capital online, people are marketing online. People are going directly to individual groups and subgroups on chats like Reddit and saying, you might be interested in this offering that we're doing.
That's great, Matt. So Jenna, this is almost easy for you. I mean, if we're seeing younger people get more involved, who are probably technologically more advanced than some olders, and you're seeing international companies, how does this position you? Are you seeing similar trends? I'm sure, I don't want to say you're licking your lips and your chops. This is great, because this suits well for a new, a trust company that's more electronic.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what Erik had said, some of the challenges that we face as a business are actually relating to resetting the rails and forcing or trying to make changes to the infrastructure that we exist in. And so we're continually trying to push that forward, which is one objective. And then at the same time, internally finding ways to work within those confines to make life more efficient for both our clients and their shareholders. And I think somebody did say the word monopolistic, so I will say it. It's a great opportunity for us, is how we all see it. It's a great opportunity to go in with a disruptive, tech-forward product offering that says to their clients, we want to make this easier for you. We want to give you the ability to, look at your cap table through an online portal and run reports yourself. And we want your shareholders to be able to have access to their accounts where they can download their DRS statement and send it to their broker, which is a really novel process that we have that doesn't really exist with our competitors. And so I think it's overall, it's an exciting time. I think there's still a lot of work that can be done, and we're constantly trying to push those boundaries. But I would say, you know, for companies that are coming to Canada, you do want to be asking the question, what can you, especially for international companies looking at this market, what can you do for me that's gonna make my life easier? So can you use email? Time zones can be challenging. Can things be sent overnight? One of the big things that we found, Matt, you mentioned changes during COVID. So shareholders of Canadian companies may know that when you're trying to transfer securities, you need to get a medallion guarantee to do that if it's registered. Obviously, COVID, there's not a lot of places you can go in and get a medallion guarantee. So although our offices have been open during COVID because we're an essential service, we're now doing virtual medallion guarantees with a lot of international shareholders, which is great. And oftentimes you will find shareholders in Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver also wanting to do virtual because they just don't want to have to come downtown, which is fine. But things like that, that's just making capital markets more appealing and easier for companies and their shareholders are what we're focused on. The other thing I would say when we're speaking about trends and what we've seen over the past 12 months, there's nothing that's been more surprising, I guess, for me than the number of companies who are doing a primary listing in Canada and a dual listing in the US. I don't remember from when I was practicing at a securities law firm ever seeing the number of companies listing OTC and NASDAQ as a secondary listing once they're listed in Canada. And so Odyssey is both a Canadian and a US transfer agent. And that's another big question to ask, because if you're coming here and we're your primary transfer agent, to tack on a NASDAQ or an NYSE or an AIM listing, which we all have, we have a good group of clients that have all of those dual or tri-listed structures, you don't have to go engage anyone else. It can all be done under one roof, and it's seamless. And so I think that's a big push that the Canadian capital markets gives the advantage of. Come here, do your primary listing with us, and then you can tack on a secondary listing very, very seamlessly.
That's
You know, it's interesting.
Please, Matt, yeah, comment on that.
I was just gonna say, I just realized the three of us haven't connected on this, but over the last couple of months, we had one issuer come on the DealMaker platform. They raised from 1,000 or so new shareholders. Odyssey did the books and records for them digitally, created an entirely electronic set of positions that were shared through the DealMaker software, and that issuer then went and listed on Neo. So, you know, I think that's something where we all align in the value propositions we're offering to the capital markets, bringing speed and innovation and efficiency in a new way of doing things that you know, is just the first of many.
And the thing that I think Oded, everybody's kind of mentioned as well is it's about service. You know, the organizations, and there's probably a good reason, you know, that the three of us get along so well and cooperate. At the end of it, we're all mentally and business oriented to over service each client that comes through the door. We love seeing successful partners. It's about our respected companies being successful in their business. That's success ultimately for the three of us together. And when your success stories look good, people come and find you and say, hey, I saw what you did for this client. And I'd love to be in the loop on what you're doing for them and how I can get the same thing. And in a COVID era especially, everybody's watching. And if anything else, like the comments from Jenna and Matt, it is hyper awareness about what is going on in the market today, who's doing what worked for them, where, you know, I would say a year ago, it was a lot more conversation. You have to go and meet people in person and kind of find this stuff. There's so much more openness and transparency with around how the business is being run today. And it's instantaneous on how quickly you can find it.
So I think what I'm hearing from you, again, obviously, aside from, you know, the personal characteristics that the three of you possess of being great business people, and again, wanting to engage with the clients, is, I guess, number one is obviously you're bringing new technologies and the receptivity is out there from both issuers and shareholders, whether it's to be completely electronic, as Jenna's commented, to look at the value proposition that Matt and his team does, or again, to look at how things are going on. You know, I think, and obviously, do you see this continuing to accelerate, or is COVID going to slow down and are people going to go back to somewhat the old ways that they did things? Matt, maybe I'll start with you.
I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle.
Right.
I don't think so. I think certainly in some of the trends we're talking about where individuals are using the internet to participate in capital formation transactions, and they're completing subscription agreements online, and they're paying online, and they're doing it from their mobile phone, and they're doing it in 5 seconds, and then they're getting an electronic statement of their books and records, and they're going to move that to a brokerage account, and they're going to trade that electronically too. Like the old way of doing things where you had to wait for days for paper to show up in the mail, which you'd sign and then mail back, those days are gone.
Erik or Jen, any comments?
Could not agree
Does
more.
anyone care to disagree?
Yeah,
Nope.
I don't see that. And I guess that was an easy softball for you guys. If I can, I'd like to go back to the dualistic. And again, maybe talk a little bit more about that. I know Jenna commented on it. And again, from your perspective, you know, both Erik and Matt, I mean, Matt, are you seeing the internet? Are you able to handle? I mean, maybe talk a little bit about, again, international investors, are they able to utilize your service? And then Erik, talk about, again, the coexistence. I mean, the idea, as Jenna said, whether it's cross-listing in the US, cross-listing on the AIM, the LSE, Frankfurt. I mean, is this just going to continue to accelerate? So Matt, if I can start with you, just are you seeing this opportunity from international investors coming to you?
Yeah, I mean, we're a software solution. The issuers are using our software to run a capital raise transaction. So an issuer who can take money on a private placement from a jurisdiction outside of North America can do that with our software or without our software. What our software does is it lets them do it online. But I think, you know, as much as it's easy to quote the stats on what's happening in the States with Robinhood and Wealthsimple in Canada, I think the world wants in, and I'd be interested to hear from an Israeli perspective as well, whether those trends of, you know, individual investors, millennial investors starting their own accounts, using the internet to find good deal flows. Like I know one of the big competitors to AngelList that came out of Israel was Our Crowd, which was an early predecessor to the type of technology that we're now seeing spread throughout the world, where issuers are basically creating communities online. It's true that securities law are locally based. They're very jurisdiction oriented, and in this country we have 10 securities regulators as opposed to some countries which only have 1. I may or may not have opinions on that for another panel another day. Jenna may or may not have opinions on that for another panel for another day. But I do think this is a global phenomenon, and I do think the internet has changed the game for people around the world, and the desire to see in real time and to do things in real time from mobile phones and from the internet is permanent and only going to increase.
Erik, anything?
Well, I think there's a really important element here as well, and the world has somewhat shrunk since we've obviously been able to move into a digital format. But what has become very clear to us over our 6.5 years in operations as a stock market, your Canadian listing is there for your Canadian investors, and US markets or going to LSE, you always want to be able to best service and provide the best experience to your shareholders in your business. So by having, you know, an OTC, eventually, hopefully a company can upgrade to a NASDAQ or an IC listing, that just gives a much better, more seamless experience for US investors to access US stock trade. It's a better ultimate experience than trading on the quotation board that is the OTC. But the key point there is, you know, Canada can be a great cornerstone for all of your expansion initiatives on both the North American continent and abroad, because our regulatory regime, nice parallel, obviously, into the US. Not that we'll go too far down the regulatory rabbit hole, but there are a number of nice efficiencies cross-border that can actually make it easy for a company from Canada to go and get listed in the US and get access to the US investor base in a fairly cost-effective manner. And it's something that we obviously have a very healthy group. Our banks in Canada, some of the largest corporations, are dual listed across border for exactly that reason. And our hope, obviously, again, back to service, we continue to deliver on that mission so those companies stay in Canada and continue to service their Canadian shareholder base. And then where else can you put that technology to work? The public company side of things is fun. There's a lot happening in the private company sphere. You look at some of the larger VC funds and mandates where you start attracting these broad investor bases early on in a company's life cycle. And then you have an informed user base to work from and deliver ultimately on a go public later on. So fast moving, but service, again, the cornerstone behind it.
Matt, I know you had commented earlier, and that our Israeli companies are, again, one of my frustrations that I've been in the capital markets, like many of you, probably longer than all of you, is that Israeli companies didn't come here for the longest period of time. You hear them; they've been to New York 50 times, they've been to Boston 30 times, they'd even visit Niagara Falls, but they'd never come to Toronto or Vancouver. Again, and now we are seeing this, and I'm thrilled, again, based on what the three of you have told us, biotech, tech, I mean, ESG, all these areas. What else can we, again, or we, and even you guys, what can the regulators do, what can Canada do to make Canada even more attractive? Again, as you said, we're a great hop skip to a variety of other different exchanges, but Jenna, maybe I'll start with you. Is there any thoughts you have? I mean, what can we do better?
I think awareness is probably where it starts, and really conveying some of these elements of value proposition to Israeli companies and the Israeli capital markets influencers who drive that. I think there has been more happening between, I mean, as you and I had spoken about before, between Canada and Israel, and having conferences and just understanding what's going on in Canada and why it's an attractive marketplace to list and invest. I would have to say that I think everybody being home and locked up over the last year has really done a lot to give the to increase that awareness, because people are home and are looking at and are online. But they're looking at things like LinkedIn, they're connecting with other people virtually, whereas before you were living your life and going on vacation and doing things that were not always so work related, and you didn't have as much time for these, I guess, expanding your horizons in what exists. So I would say, I think some strides have been made, but having conversations like this, where you have three companies that are disrupting, and that really, I think the strength in the three of us is we've come together over wanting to resolve problems that exist. And we're using tech to be our differentiator. And we're using our reach to be able to say, you can come to us, we'll make life efficient for you, we'll create a better process. And then this can be your starting point in which you can expand into other markets if that's where you want to go. And so I think awareness is key, and having things like this panel and getting information out there that really conveys why Canada is an attractive option, especially as compared to the US as a starting market. There's a lot of value there. I don't know, Matt, I would also pose this to you and Erik. Like we quite often hear from our clients, Odyssey is a huge US client base and a huge US shareholder base, which is why we have a US office and a US presence. But we hear a lot of the time, the Canadian dollar is still so cheap for US companies. They pay us in Canadian dollars, which is a third, 2/3 of what the US dollar is. Yeah, 30% discount. So that's another reason why I think it's attractive for at least companies coming from the US, but I would say from Israel as well. You're taking a discount from that US dollar amount that you'd be paying service providers or exchanges or regulatory bodies when you come to Canada.
Yeah, so I think there's a fairly sophisticated investing public in Canada, and maybe that comes from generations of resource extraction and resource companies seeking capital from the public to go and drill holes and maybe find something and maybe not. That's educated the public to be, and you don't really think of Canada as a, super risk aggressive public, but from an investing perspective, I do think there's an understanding of risk here. And I do think for global companies who are looking for a source of capital, there is a large retail participation in the market that is trained to accept and expect a bit of risk, and that's good for companies who are raising equity capital.
It's been the theme, I suppose, right? You've got higher risk growth stage companies tapping public markets across a different number of sectors along the way. And I think the other thing too that we should do, and maybe something 3 or 4 of us can all do together, it's also about knowing that pathway. Who are your partners? How does it all kind of come together? And usually, at least from our experience here at NEO, you're doing something new or different, you usually need to find one enterprising partner who's prepared to kind of blaze that trail with you and find all of those little tiny pebbles on the ground, pick them up, put them in their basket and say, yes, this is the pathway. And then you can point to that. And you know, for us, that was our MindMed journey over the last year or so. They were the first biopharma company in psychedelics to go public on NEO. They just made it to NASDAQ. You'd be amused at the number of conversations we continue to have, but hey, that experience was something incredible. I want to see the exact same thing. What were the things that they did to make this all work for them? And, you know, as partners in their business, you can obviously very quickly pick up on the things that made it efficient, share that with others, and try and bring more people with you. That's a bit the mission that we've been on, and one that the team and I are continuing to push on as well.
And that's incredible. I'm going to throw something else. I mean, at the 3 of you, I mean, you're all innovators, you're all disruptors. Put your hat on again. What are the new technologies over the next 3 to 5 years, 18 months even, that are going to be the biggest impact in the capital markets? And let me throw out something out there very broad and see. I'd love to hear your viewpoint on blockchain. If it's something that you see in all this, maybe Jenna, I'll start with you. If just some thoughts, just where is the world going? What's the next things? How do you see, and again, if you want to bring in, how does blockchains fit into all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think if as a business right now, you're not thinking about how blockchain could impact you, you're not really thinking. So absolutely, I think there will be an impact of blockchain technology. I think crypto, what I always consider from a personal investment strategy and a personal business strategy is, what will my children be doing in 10 or 20 years that they would say, Mom, I wish you would have invested in this when I was 1 or 3. Well, like crypto, digital, will they have chips in their fingers that they can pay for everything for and use at the airport? Like, I think that is where the future is going. Albeit it'll be some time before we get there. But I definitely think blockchain for us, what that transition will probably look like as a transfer agent. Eventually we will get to a decentralized system, and we're aware of that. But I think along the way, you have to get there through a means that keeps market confidence in the process. And so before moving from traditional to a purely decentralized system, there will be a path that includes, testing environments that are sort of half and half, where you would still have a traditional role of a transfer agent, but it would be in a blockchain environment. And eventually, as innovation happens around that system, you get to a purely decentralized environment. I think one of the most challenging questions about that is, how do you regulate that environment, and who are the regulators of that process? And we want to be a part of that conversation, but we also want to be pushing forward the innovation that gets us there. So absolutely, I think blockchain will be there. I think crypto will be there. I know the exchanges are looking at how do we have digital environments, which Odyssey is a part of. So I would say in the next 2 to 3 years, absolutely, there will be token offerings, more digital securities in the marketplace. But I think it will be a bit longer than that the traditional system really gets disrupted.
Matt? Yeah, please.
So I still think we are a long way away from seeing the full effect or the full impact that will be had on the capital markets by the internet. Right? I think blockchain and crypto are very important to talk about as well, but I don't think we are nearly near the peak of the disruption that the internet has brought. And if you think about what companies are sitting on out there, anybody who has an Instagram following, anybody who has a mailing list, anybody who has a newsletter, and I'm pretty much describing every company, right? They're sitting on a potential source of capital that they have not fully woken up to, right? With the internet and with modern marketing and with some of the regulatory changes in this country and in the US, issuers can turn their shareholders into customers. Issuers can turn their customers into shareholders, and using the internet to reach and create communities that both love your product and want to invest in your company, which means you're doing, two things with one marketing dollar, and you're creating broad and stable shareholder base who love your product, and you're creating new customers from your shareholders who are incentivized to continue to buy. I think we have a long way to go before the market fully realizes how powerful that is. And that's primarily driven by the internet. I also love the question, by the way, because it has the potential to create one of those iconic moments where someone watches this video in 20 years and we're like, those guys had no idea about that thing Jenna mentioned, where the chip in your finger lets you buy securities on the, yeah, that's what I think.
You guys are all too young to remember Star Trek and Mr.
I was
Spock
just gonna
and
say.
so
If it happened on Star Trek, it will happen in our children's lifetime.
Yeah,
that's the rule.
Yeah, maybe, but Erik, if you have any comments, I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'd say this, maybe two comments. One, like the power of community. LinkedIn is a flipping amazing tool for one. Like just the ability for us to even find, the folks who joined us today through something as quick as a like, share, shovel it around the internet, and it's done and you're here. It's incredible just to watch how quickly people can consume information, see it, and either move on or, yeah, I'm actually quite interested in this. Let's chat. So the toolkit and the way that people find out about things, just incredible. From a Neo perspective, we're pretty focused on three things right now. It's about efficiency, it's about scale, it's about how do we take out process that doesn't need to be done by humans, and making sure that we can continue to grow the organization as we continue to see success. So, we're looking at artificial intelligence. How do we kind of remove the routine or redundant exercises where we've read something before, it's the same thing in a different document. Okay, we can move on and focus on the things that are different. We're also looking at other asset classes, other categories, other parts of these fine capital markets that we can have some fun with, and I'd say put to work some of the unique things that we've built, which, as a stock exchange, we're really two things. We're connecting capital raisers and people who want to invest in hopefully the most efficient, fair, and democratic way possible. And if we can use that for more than just stocks that are listed on an exchange, then we're liable to do something with it. And we're pretty nimble and thoughtful group. If we can find something else to shovel down the same channel, where we're already using that for something called PTFs or platform traded funds, which are our mutual funds or OM funds. Jenna and Matt are both attached to parts of that business as well. And maybe a bit of groundbreaking on our end. We're working on another moniker that should make its way out to the street in due course. I think we'll call them PTCs, or platform traded companies, where we'll help bring some corporations into this world in a bit the same way hyper efficient rails make things easier for companies to work with. So we'll see how the world evolves, but that's really where we start poking around at different asset classes, different industries, challenges that we can solve and be a part of and use our expertise to tackle.
Jenna, Matt, I was actually going to ask you guys, and thank you, Erik, where are you going to be spending your time, over the next 6, 12, 18 months? What are the plans for Jenna and for Matt on Odyssey and DealMaker? What are you working on?
Go for it.
Jenna,
yeah, so I mean, we're still in a big scale up right now. We are about 70 people. Really committed to, we've just had a ton of growth over the last few years, which I think and hope will continue. One of the biggest things for us when Erik spoke about service and disruption, you really need to have the right group of people to be able to do that. And so we, again, coming back to this opportunity in a monopoly, is we can pull people to Odyssey who share those values. So team growth is critical to our long-term success and having people that think about disruption and how to do things easier. We're on the same path as Neo. We're trying to automate everywhere we can. We're trying to integrate AI into our processes. There's a lot of room for growth and change there. And then beyond that, it is continuing for us to focus on the North American experience of Odyssey. So on both sides of the border, and really continuing to expand our verticals, whether it's employee plans. We acquired a corporate secretarial firm last year doing press release filings, CDR filings, and continuing to establish us as a brand that is trying to do things differently and better for our clients. Those are all things that are on our radar for the next 12 to 18 months, and it will be a busy one. I know that.
Yeah. Matt, what's on the front burner?
So we see that we have an important role to play in educating the market as to some of the opportunities that are out there. We like to call it skating to where the puck is going. So being in a position to be a leader and to build on the growth we've had over the last couple of years. We've had tremendous growth year over year as the capital markets has been waking up to this realization that they can turn their customers into shareholders. And so helping share the case studies of successful issuers who have raised on our platform, including the one where all three of us collaborated, having a larger presence in the US, which, as Jenna already described, is a major center of capital formation already, where our issuers are telling us they want to be spending their time, and we have a lot of US issuers using our platform as well right now. And so we've already automated as much as we can automate in terms of helping issuers raise capital. So it's just about making sure the market realizes what a powerful opportunity this is and how they can use our software and how they can use the internet to build those communities and raise capital online.
Guys, wouldn't it be fun if we gave CDR a facelift? I mean,
you don't love light brown as a color.
Jenna, you gave me a small aneurysm when you said CDR. I'm like, damn, that's one area that the three of us could go and have a ton of fun with. It's just a little hobby.
You should, Erik. You should. I know there's someone who does the artwork for your new listings. Has a psychedelics background. Sometimes they could definitely spruce that up.
That would be better. A little change in color would go a long way.
Amen. I don't have a lot more to ask you guys. I really want to say, thank you all three of you, for enlightening, educating, entertaining us, and on a little on all your businesses, and again where you see the future going. Again, on behalf of myself and everybody who's here, I want to thank you. I mean, it's I don't need to wish you success because you guys have already had great success and well deserved. And as Matt said, I think you're all going where the puck is going. I mean, you're not where it was. So congratulations to all three of you. Thank you. We look forward to bringing you back, like Matt said, at a later date, later time for a different conversation. But again, thank you all. I would just stay safe, stay well, get vaccinated, everybody, and let's hope that we can all meet for a glass of wine or a beer at some point and do this thing live as opposed to by virtual.